John F. Kennedy says, the success of any school can be measured by the contribution the alumni make to a national life. The galaxy of individuals, the heart of DPS-Mis Principal Ms. Asnan Nafees, our two lungs, Vice Principal Ms. Soma Bhattacharjee and Miss Mary Cruz, our teachers who are entire nervous system, my fellow students who make up every single cell that collectively form the DPS-Mis today, and the consultant, Dr. Faid Khopekar'S, a very good evening to you all. This platform would heighten the untarnished relationship between the DPS-Mis students and the alumni. Dr. Faid is rendering his alma mater an invaluable service by taking part in this event and inspiring the young minds present in this consultation room. Wherever the art of medicine is loved, there is also a love for humanity. Being in the medical field requires astounding strength and dedication. So today, during the crucial time of the pandemic, we have one such alumnus with us, who is one of those who are in the front lines fighting with the disease to serve the humanity. In today's operation, let us partake in the story of an alumnus from the batch 2013 to 14, who has always been burning with passion and is always ready to give back to the world to the best of his abilities. He was an extremely talented and enthusiastic student. He always had great passion towards his career and has endlessly been a compassionate and enduring man at his heart. An avid and fiery debater during his high school years and early university days, Dr. Faid is now a junior doctor working for the National Health Service in Scotland. After graduating from the University of Glasgow with a degree in medicine and surgery, he is currently working in the Glasgow Royal Infirmary. Epitomizing the school's motto, service before self, on a regular basis, he has never forgotten his roots and has always been keen on helping students at DPS. Behind every success story, there's an outstanding support system, and school is the place most of us start our stories from. Now, I would like to invite our corpus, who has been the heart and strength of our school, our principal, Ms. Asnan Nafees, to share a few words of wisdom. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Maria. That was a wonderful introduction. Good evening to the vice principals, Ms. Mary and Ms. Soma, to the alumni in charge, coordinator, Ms. Jaya Majumdar, the team of teachers, coordinators, and my dear students, and a very good evening to the special student who is our alumnus, Dr. Faid Khopekar'S. What a moment of pride to see our students taking up responsible positions and displaying great sense of compassion and strength at a very, very difficult time. I remember Faid in the school as a student who was extremely focused, who knew what he had to do in his future. He was very clear he wanted to be a doctor, and like the true sense that our school stands for, or the philosophy that our school stands for, a student is just not academically oriented. Faid was interested in so many extracurricular activities and was ever willing to help the school with anything that the school required or wherever we required help from Faid. Remember, Faid, we had met in Malaysia, and it was such a beautiful feeling when we were on our school trip with the set of students. Faid and another set of few students, Ahmed and Yusuf, they somehow managed to squeeze in some time from the busy schedules, from the academic time, and they came to meet us. It was such a beautiful, memorable evening that we spent together. Faid has always been in the front line of the Alumni Association, has always been willing to participate and communicate with the current students and spread knowledge. When we say we are a school with a difference, we strongly believe that our students, who are our ambassadors, and these are our special envoys who make a difference to the lives of every single person that they come in touch with. A little while ago, when I was having a discussion with Faid, Faid was awestruck by the way the results of the school have been sparkling around in the news, that we have been toppers in the Gulf region too for the science stream, and we have toppers from 1st position to 10th position in grade 10. And we owe it all to our team of teachers. Well done, teachers, for producing such wonderful results. More than producing results, it's about bringing giving education to our young children, which is holistic in nature, which is important, that every child develops a certain character which sees that they respect the fact they're sensitive to others' requirements and always believe in the school's motto, service before self. And here is Dr. Faid, who strongly believes that service before self. He's got a busy schedule. He said yesterday it was his day of festival, but he had no break. He just said his morning prayers and went and performed his duties in the front line, that is in the hospital. What else is epitomized except that our school motto is engraved in his heart, service before self. Thank you, Faid, for joining us this evening. You have always been a wonderful student. You've been turned to be a wonderful human being. Continue to do service the way you do it. You are the best judge. Thank you. It's over to Maria.
Thank you, ma'am, for your uplifting words. Before we start, allow me to walk you through the guidelines for today's operation. Out of all our senses, our sight plays a major role, so kindly keep your cameras on throughout. Kindly keep your microphones muted to prevent any disturbances during this operation. In order for the operation to be successful and disciplined, please ask questions only through the chat and a doctor will answer to your queries later. Since conversations are not allowed in an operation theater, you may converse with one another via another device or platform. To learn and understand better, please keep your screen on speaker mode or pin Dr. Khopekar'S. Once the session is over, everybody except the teachers are requested to participate in the poll and fill the feedback form to ensure the successful operation. We hope that this consultation enables everyone to enhance their interest in the field of medicine. With this, I would like to hand over the screen to Dr. Faid Khopekar'S.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that lovely and marvelous introduction. I feel a bit overwhelmed in this moment, all those lovely words to be said about myself. But thank you so much. I would like to start by saying Eid Mubarak to everyone. I hope you all are staying safe, but at the same time, you're enjoying yourself, you're trying to have a good time with your family, because I believe that we do need that, especially after the months and months of lockdown that we've had. And like ma'am said, I do think congratulations are in order, not only because the school has managed to achieve such amazing results, but also because you did it during the time of a worldwide pandemic. You know, you had so many obstacles in your path, and yet, you know, you achieved your very best. So the talk that I'm doing today is called Being a Doctor. I'm going to share my experience and my knowledge. So thank you for the opportunity to let me share my experience regarding my profession. The goal I have in mind for this talk is, you know, share my experience, give you my knowledge, and guide and inspire you. And at the end of this talk, if I feel that I have done that, then I do think that I've done a good job. Just as a disclaimer before I start, so this is obviously my experience and, you know, how my life has turned around after DPS. And experiences can be quite subjective. I'm lucky enough to have a good experience. You will go on to have your own experiences. You might meet someone who has had a much different experience than I have. But at the end of the day, what you need to remind yourself is you need to absorb all this information and, you know, have your own unique experience. So with that being said, I'm going to give you a quick outline of the talk. I'm going to tell you about my journey so far. What I'm going to try to do is squeeze the last 6 years in a slideshow and, you know, tell you what happened after I graduated from DPS and where I am at the moment. The next thing I want to do is talk about the medical degree. We all know that, you know, you study medicine, it's a hard degree, as everyone says, but nobody actually knows what the degree encompasses. I definitely did not know what the degree was all about before I actually even started for it. Moving forward, I want to talk about the application process a little bit and tell you what it's like to study medicine abroad, how the medical schools, you know, seek medical students, what they're looking for. And the big crux of the topic would be about what differences are there when you study medicine in India and when you study medicine abroad. Because I was lucky enough to, you know, study abroad, and you have, you know, you might be at a stage in your life when you're planning on studying medicine in India or abroad, and that'll be something that might be quite important to some of you guys. And the other question that I usually get from high school students is, what happens after I graduate? You know, what's the working scheme like? How does it feel? What actually happens after you get the doctor in front of your name? and how does it feel, especially now after, with everything that's going on, what's going on in the world? How do you respond to that? So I shall be taking questions at different times, and I'll try my best to answer your questions. Some of you have, contacted me in the past regarding my degree and how I've, reached where I am, and I'm more than happy to help you with any questions that you may have. Another disclaimer, I'm quite new to the Zoom call, so I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to make sure that, I'm able to see all the chat, and I'm just trying to make sure that I'm able to see all the questions as well. So please bear with me if I'm a bit slow. So moving forwards, my journey so far, I'm just going to make sure that the slideshow is working. Yeah. So I joined DPS back in the 8th standard, and it was the year 2009. This was back when we were still in the old campus. Some of you might remember it, some of you might not. But I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to continue my education at DPS and graduate from DPS. But even before I graduated, I was already holding some conditional offers from universities in the Middle East as well as in Southeast Asia. I graduated from DPS in 2014. And shortly after that, I decided to pursue a degree in medicine at the International Medical University in Malaysia. The reason why I chose that was of the unique degree pathway that they have, where they allow you to transfer to one of their many international partners, and you finish your degree in those international universities. I then transferred to the University of Glasgow in 2017. So I had done the first 2.5 years in Malaysia, and then I completed my degree in Glasgow earlier this year in April 2020. And just weeks after I had graduated, I was asked, or I volunteered to work as a foundation interim doctor because of the COVID-19 crisis at the Glasgow Royal Infirmary. And I do believe that you might not be able to see the other half of it. So I'm just going to move that. And so that happened in April. I worked at the Glasgow Royal Infirmary as a doctor, as a fresh doctor. And as of this month, or as of yesterday, I started work as a junior doctor at Ninemills Hospital in Dundee in Scotland. And I also hold an offer from University of Edinburgh for a Master's in Surgical Sciences, which I'll be doing alongside my training. So that's just the past 6 years of my life squeezed into a slideshow. And hopefully that gives you a superficial look at what my journey has been like. So if you have any questions about that, I'll be more than happy to answer that. So with regards to the medical degree, we all know that the famous words that we know, the famous letters that we know are MBBS or Bachelor of Medicine or Bachelor of Surgery. But what you need to realize is the surgery, the degree in itself is called by different names across the globe. So if you're someone who is keen to study medicine abroad, what you need to realize is it's the same degree and it might be called by different names. This was something that I didn't know, and there is a very there's a very famous misconception about saying that MBBS is better than other degrees or MBCHP is better than MBBS. What you need to realize is that they're both the same degree. You will come across different universities giving out different titles, but regardless of what you graduate with, you are taught the same content. You are taught the same way, which is quite changing in the last couple of years. And you also need to realize that the different entry pathways universities have across the globe. So it's usually an undergraduate degree. What I mean by that is once you finish your 12th standard, you're able to apply for a degree in medicine. And that's usually the case, except in Northern America, which is United States and Canada and Australia and New Zealand. In these 4 countries, it's regarded as a postgraduate degree, which means that you need to have a degree which is not medicine before you can apply to study medicine. In those countries, they don't call it MBBS or MBCHB. In those countries, they call it MD or DO because it's regarded as a postgraduate degree. So it's something that requires a bit of research on your part because I was not aware of these facts when I was planning to apply for medicine. With regards to the duration, I have had this conversation with numerous relatives where they have told me, oh, medicine, it's quite a lengthy degree. So the crux of the matter is, the truth is, yes, it is a lengthy degree compared to other degrees, which usually are 3 to 4 years. But you also need to realize the profession that you're joining. It's an intense 4 to 6 years or even longer. And the reason why that happens is because they're preparing you to be the very best out there. Because at the end of the day, you're not dealing with something that's, you're dealing with something that's quite important, which is human life. And that can't be taken, with any less attention. So if you're doing an undergraduate degree, then you have 4 to 6 years. It can be anywhere from 4 to 6 years, depending on where you are, on where you're planning to study, and if you have taken any research opportunities in the middle. If you're in Northern America, or if you're in Australia or New Zealand, it's, like I said, you will require an undergraduate degree before you start medicine. It goes without saying, that means that the total time you spend in a university just goes up to 6 to 8 years. When I was applying to different universities, I applied to Cornell, and some of you who might have applied to Cornell in Doha would realize that they have a pre-medicine course before you actually start studying medicine. And once you finish that pre-medicine course, you go on to study medicine, and that can be up for 6 to 8 years. So even before you start your medical degree, you need to gear yourself, and you need to remind yourself of the long path that you have ahead of you, and you need to remind yourself that it's all going to be worth it at the end of the day. Moving forwards, I'm going to just have a quick look at the questions that I have received so far. Will I be doing a Q&A session? I'll try to address all the questions as I go through, but if I do miss something, feel free to message again. Some other questions regarding what is the biggest challenge I faced while studying medicine. I'll come to that in a bit. Right, so moving forwards, application process for medical schools. So some of you might be considering studying medicine in India, which is great in itself. But if you're someone like me who is trying to apply for medicine in India as well as abroad, you need to realize how different the application processes are. So this is a good pie chart that represents what international or medical schools abroad tend to look for in the application process. So you have your academics, which is quite or very important, and that goes without saying because that has been the past 12 years of your life. So academics do hold a very important weightage when it comes to applying to medical schools, but you also have various other factors. You have standardized tests, you have co-curricular activities. Many universities now require you to write a personal essay, and you also have interviews. So you can be great at academics, but if you don't have the other factors to support you, if you don't have evidences that show that you are good out with academics, you won't be able to, go far into medical school. So you need to keep that in mind, that yes, academic is important, but you also need to remember that you have other factors that you need to work on, especially during an application process. And I think that's quite relevant for any university you apply to, be it in India or outside India, because you might not have the best score out there, but if you do have a resume or a portfolio that shows your holistic development throughout the years, that does weigh quite a lot over the years, not just at university level, but once you graduate from universities as well. So I'm going to go into a depth, just superficially talk about each of these aspects. With regards to academics, you have a few prerequisite subjects. I believe 9th and 10th standard students would like to know this. There are a few subjects that you're required to take if you're thinking about joining medicine. And the subjects are biology, chemistry. I've written physics and or math. That's because it differs from country to country. You might find some countries require you to take all 4. Some of them require you to take only 3. And that's where your research has to come into play. And you need to realize and understand and do your research and find out what does your university want. So the general consensus is if you score really, really high, you can apply for medical school. I would like to know what your understanding is. What do you think is the average score of a student that gets into medical school in 12th standard? Feel free to just pop in to the chat and just let me know, because I would like to see what you think. Because I've spoken to a few high school students, and I've received a mix of answers where some people think that only smart people get into medical school. So the general consensus that I can see over here is basically 95% and above, and someone has said 97.5. That is not true. What you'll find is you don't need that high, you do need a good standing in your academics, but the average score, according to many researchers, is actually just 70%. You will find that most medical schools in the UK, definitely in the UK and in Southeast Asia, they require you to have at least 70% in all 3 subjects before you can apply to a medical school. So yes, you have your academics in mind, but if you're someone who is not academically gifted, just don't beat yourself up if you're not that academically gifted, because sometimes you don't need to be smart enough to do things. You just need to work hard, which is the case for me, that's for sure. With regards to standardized tests, you have loads and loads of standardized tests. Regardless of if you're trying to do medicine or engineering or a degree in arts, this is something that's part and parcel of your life in 11th and 12th standards. You will go through different tests. A good way to, describe what these tests are would be to say that they test your knowledge out with the knowledge given to you by the school. So they test your soft skills. They test how good you are at analyzing things, how good you are at decision making, how good you are at pattern recognition. So stuff like, these questions would be mostly about your writing skills, about your literacy, how good your vocabulary is in certain situations. And you can see that I've added like different pictures of different standardized tests. So the SATs and the ACT is quite unique to the United States, and anyone and everyone who's applying to the United States would be aware of the SATs. The UCAT examination is something that's quite specific to the United Kingdom, and it's an exam that every student who wants to study medicine has to sit for, regardless of where you come from. So you can be a British student, you can be an Indian student, you can come from any part of the world, but you're required to sit the UCAT exam. The last two, the BMAT and the GAMSAT, are something that's quite specific to Australia and New Zealand. One thing I would like to say is there are 2 tests that, regardless of where you go, you're required to sit them, which is IELTS or TOEFL. So these are English language tests, which are very important, not just at the university level, but sometimes you're also required to sit this exam for visa purposes, because they want to see how proficient you are in your English language skills. Just a wee note over there is the fact that DPS prepares you really well for it. Speaking on just my experience, I never required additional preparation for it. So DPS is quite good with regards to teaching to prepare you for examinations such as, IELTS and TOEFL. So I've realized that I have not added a few, I'll go back to the previous slide. I've realized I've not added a few standardized tests which are quite unique to India, such as the NEET exam. But those are admission tests. Those are not standardized tests. So those are exams that you need to do in order to apply for medicine in India, and that's quite specific. I'll speak a bit more about that later on. With regards to co-curriculars, I, as a student, never realized how important it was to focus on co-curriculars until I was applying to different universities. And when I was in university and I had to apply for different jobs, I realized how important it was. It's basically anything and everything that you do out with the 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. time, what you focus on outside your school hours. So it could be anything that you do. It might be painting, it could be public speaking, it could be debating, it could be photography, it could be any hobby that you have, any strength that you may have that you can show to the admission panel and tell them, like, you know what, I'm good in my academics, but these are the other things that I also do on the side. Most universities now want to see a student develop in all aspects of life and not just academics. So if you have someone who is, a school topper, but doesn't do anything other than just, study a lot, they're not so keen on having this person in their university because they want to see someone who can provide back to the university as well. This also includes other aspects such as volunteer work. you will have your rendezvous every year. That's a great opportunity to, exhibit your talents as well as, show your leadership skills. And if I had to remind my 14-year-old self, one thing to do is always collect documents, always collect evidence, whatever you do, be it volunteer work, if you helped out in something, or if you were leading a group of students to do something else, going for your debate sessions, for your NUNs, just document it, because when it does come to applying to universities, I remember sending certificates all the way from my 9th standard. So these are teeny tiny things that you tend to forget, but at the end of the day, if you do submit these, they are quite important, and they show the universities that, you are quite good in other aspects of life as well. The most important bit, not the most important bit, but a significantly important bit for medical schools is the interview. I remember going for my medical interview, and I remember walking out of it completely torn apart, and I was just quite sad about how it went. It can be quite intense, but it has changed quite a lot over the last few years as well. So you have different interviews. The one that's happening right now mostly are online interviews, where you just speak to your panel just the way I'm speaking to you right now. Panel interviews are where you have a group of 3 to 5 doctors, or sometimes even 2 doctors, and they ask you questions. And the most recent trend that's going around, and that's happening in most medical schools in the United States and in the UK, is something called as MMI, or multiple mini interviews. So what you have is you have 3 interviews, 10 minutes each, with just one other person. So it doesn't feel as intimidating. It's not as scary as a panel interview. And it's quite, even though it's a formal interview, they tend to be a bit relaxed, because they ask you questions about yourself, something that they might, something they might see on your application. If they see that you've volunteered for something, they might want to ask for more clarification. One thing that happened for myself was they gave me a problem-solving scenario. They gave me a scenario, and these scenarios don't necessarily have a right or a wrong answer. What they want to see is how you think and how you, come to a conclusion. And are you confident about the answer that you give? Because they will always tell you that, you might be wrong. And they want to see how confident you are about your answer, and will you abide by your answer or not. So these are some things that, if you go online, you'll see that different people have different ways of addressing these interviews. And the best way to, go forward with is just practice with a friend. And it's even better if you practice with someone who you don't know, because chances are the people on the panel are people you have never met. There's a question over here that says, can you describe a scenario? So the scenario I was given was the tram track situation. I don't know if you guys are aware of it. So it goes something along the lines of, there's a tram going down the track. The track splits into 2. On one of the tracks is a pregnant woman. On the other tracks, it's a group of students who are playing. On which side would you send the tram on? And like I said, there is no particular right or wrong answer in this situation. They just want to see your reasoning and which decision or what decision you'll make. So you have loads and loads of different scenarios. There's a lot of content online that you can go to and you can have a look at. And these are quite common questions that most universities usually go for. How to write the letter of recommendation. So you are not supposed to write your own letter of recommendations. Your teachers and your lovely teachers, faculty at Dps-Mis will be able to help you with that. Moving forward, so assuming that you have cleared your medical admissions, you're now sitting in a big lecture theater with doctors and future doctors sitting right next to you. So what exactly is a medical degree? This is quite common. Even this is an outline even for the Indian degrees. So the first few years of your Indian degree, you have not just in the first few years of your medical degree, are something called as preclinical. Basically, this is where you establish your foundation knowledge of the human body, of diseases and stuff like that. And that's usually year 1 and 2, and in some cases year 3, depending on where you are. And from year 3 onwards till your final year, it's purely clinical, which means you spend less time in a lecture theater and more time in a hospital or in a clinic, or you're out there learning the actual profession. One particular thing, one striking difference that I've seen in Indian universities and in medical universities abroad is that medical universities abroad focus quite a lot on research opportunities. because they don't want their students to graduate and then go into research. They want to inculcate the behavior of, getting into research quite early on. So if you do decide to study abroad, you will have different opportunities to do research between the preclinical and clinical phase. A quite common one is something called as intercalation in the UK, where you end up doing 1 year of just pure research. And when you do graduate from the university, you end up with 2 different degrees, which is quite, it looks really good on your resume. And if you're someone who is quite keen in research, it's a wonderful opportunity. One of my friends who is quite interested in sports medicine did a research with football players and to see the impacts of different injuries on long-term effects on football players' lives. So if it's something, so that's a situation where my friend has combined his passion for football as well as his passion for medicine, and that's quite interesting. In the United States, you can do a double degree, which is a MD, PhD. So you become a double doctor essentially. And that's quite important as well. But the other thing that needs to be pointed out is it's quite competitive. But this is just for your background knowledge, just to keep in mind. If you're someone who's quite interested in research, you can do it while you're doing your medical degree. With regards to how the degree is taught in itself, and this is something that's quite common across the globe. It's not something that's quite particular to India or it's quite particular to the UK. It's something that's happening everywhere. So the old system of delivering the medical education was just how you learn in high school. So you have different subjects. You have biology, you have physics, you have chemistry, you have English. Similar to that, when you go to a medical school, you have different subjects. You have anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, pathology, pharmacology. The problem with the old system is the fact that you study one subject, and what they found was the students were not able to correlate to these subjects. There was no overlap between these subjects. And it was left to the students' devices to find this overlap for themselves. It's not a bad system. It's an efficient system. It's been going on for years and years and even centuries at this point. But we are coming into a phase where we're making a slow transition from this traditional mode of delivery to a modern mode of delivery. Because if you think about it, when you go into a hospital, you don't see an anatomy department, you don't see a physiology department, you don't see a biochemistry department. What you do see is a cardiovascular department or a pulmonary department or a pathology department. So what the medical schools across the globe have started doing is teaching medicine on the basis of organ systems. So let's say you have the cardiovascular system. So the school will teach you anything and everything regarding the cardiovascular system. So when that happens, you have a good correlation between anatomy and physiology and all the other subjects. You don't necessarily study just one subject at a time. And what that found was that students were much better equipped to deal with real life scenarios. They were much better able to understand the knowledge that they were absorbing from universities, and they could apply that knowledge in healthcare settings. So that was something that's quite unique, and it is something that you need to keep in mind moving forwards. There's a quick question that I could just see over here. I'm confused between being a doctor and a medical researcher. You don't necessarily have to be a doctor to become a medical researcher, but all doctors can become a medical researcher. I'm not sure if that answers your question in particular. But what I'm saying is, especially once you become a doctor, you can have different pathways. You can choose purely to do research, or you can choose to do purely just clinical work, which means working in hospitals. You can, plan to do your own clinics and stuff like that. But I'll get into that a bit later on. So this is it's a very heavy slide. I apologize for that, but this is just to give an example of the 2 different systems. So University of Oxford still follows the traditional method of teaching medicine. As you can see, you'll have different subjects in the first few years of your medical degree, like anatomy, physiology, and then you also have pathology and psychology. And as you progress to your clinical phase, you have your different placements. Whereas University of Birmingham does the modern method of delivery of subjects. So you have clinical as well as theoretical knowledge being delivered to you at the same time. And that's quite, it's shown to be quite more efficient than the traditional method of delivering knowledge. So I can see there are loads and loads of questions coming in. I'll try to answer these questions, but I think it will be best for me to answer these questions at the end of it. I will go through the chat one more time and just answer the questions as quickly as I can. The main question is that I usually get is, why did I choose to study medicine abroad, or why didn't I choose to study medicine in India? And many people have come up to me and asked me the key differences that I have, found after, speaking to my friends who studied medicine in India. What I like to say is, anyone who tells you that studying medicine in India is better than studying medicine abroad, or anyone who tells you that studying medicine abroad is better than studying medicine in India, is an ignorant person. Because what you'll see is both of these systems, both of these scenarios have its own positives and negatives, and to ignore just the negatives of one side, or to just abide by the positives, is quite ignorant for a person. So what I've done over here is giving you a quick example of, the differences that I particularly have noticed. So the admission process in India, which you can see, is quite academic focused. You have the NEET exam, and you need to have quite a significant score on the NEET exam in order to acquire a seat. Whereas the admission process for the medical schools abroad are quite holistic. Like I said, it does require you to be good in academics, but also have other characteristics. I do believe this is going to change over the next few years, especially after the new educational scheme that was released by the Prime Minister. But this is something to keep in mind, because that change is not going to happen in the next 1 or 2 years. It's going to be a while before it happens. The reason it's good to have an academic process of admission, which India does, is that at the end of it, if you do get a seat into medicine, if you are able to get a seat into medicine, it kind of tells you that you are equipped and you are able to handle the stress of the degree even before you start it. And that's also the reason why India does produce one of the best pool of doctors out there, is because our strict admission process kind of, filters out people who are not able to tolerate, or who are not able to, withstand the pressure. It's a very debatable topic in itself. You will find loads and loads of doctors who do believe that this should change, and I am one of those people who do believe this should change, because, like I said, academic is not the only thing that your life should be focused on. With regards to the curriculum and examinations, you will find that most international schools or medical schools abroad focus heavily on practical skills and communication skills as early as from year 1. This also has been raised to the Medical Council of India, and it has been it's in progress to incorporate more communication skill sessions into the Indian curriculum. One common thing that's quite prevalent in universities across the globe is something called as the OSCE, which is the Objective Structured Clinical Exam. It's purely practical. It happens in a hospital. And that is something that's sometimes regarded even more important than your paper-based exams. One thing I can tell you in my experience is the fact that you will never get an experience with regards to medical pathologies as that you do in India. There is an ocean of pathologies, an ocean of experience for you to absorb from. And you will find, if you do choose to study medicine, regardless of where you are, that people from US, from UK, go to India to do their electives. I did my electives in my 3rd year and 4th year to go to India and work in India for a month. And the amount of experience I got in India with regards to the different pathologies, the different tropical diseases that you see, chances are you might not actually see these tropical diseases anywhere else in the world. The last, but definitely not the least, is the current debate that's going on regarding the postgraduate training system in India. And everyone, local doctors as well as international doctors, are in a bit of a fuss with this, because there's quite a demand-supply inequality that goes on with regards to the number of seats available. So I found this really interesting article regarding that, like, why do Indian students go abroad to study medicine? And that's primarily because India doesn't cater to the demand and supply inequality. These numbers are back from 2018, but I believe that has come up. India, I think as of 2020, offered around 91,000 medical seats on the undergraduate level, and you have almost 10 times that number who are applying for it. So it's quite rational to think, and it's only practical for most of the students to think of, studying abroad. It is a good option to do that because at the end of the day, you do get a different experience. I'm not saying you'll get a better experience, but you'll definitely have a different experience. And it's something that you can keep in the back of your mind when you're applying for medical school. So now that you have been in medical school for 5 years or 6 years, the question is what happens after graduation. So I'm going to focus on 3 main countries primarily. So I'm going to focus on India, the United Kingdom, where I am, and the United States. So in India, the previous practice was doctors used to get their MBBS and open up their own clinics, but we have come far away from that, where most doctors go on to subspecialize. What you will realize is MBBS in a degree in itself is not enough. You need to choose a specialty and you need to focus on that specialty. That's where you have your postgraduate exams. You have the NEET PG exam, but with everything that's going on, that might get changed as well. And once you cover for the NEET PG exam, you get into a program and you go for your further training. You go for an MD degree, which is Doctor of Medicine. You go for MS, which is Master of Science. And you go for something called as DNB as well. So you have loads and loads of opportunities in India. And I think the only thing that's stopping India from being the leader in healthcare is the inefficiency of the system to cater to all the applicants that are applying for these seats. In the United Kingdom, everyone who graduates from the UK, regardless of your nationality, if you have graduated from a UK university, you are eligible to apply for the foundation program, which is a fully paid doctor program, which I'm currently enrolled in. And then you go on to do your postgraduate medical and surgical training. There are no entrance exams. It all comes down to your portfolio and how well you have performed over the last 6 years of your life, how well you've performed through med school, how well you've performed in those 2 years of foundation training. And there are no entrance exams per se, but there are different exams to go through, which you will have to sit for to prove how efficient and how competent you are. In the United States, all graduates directly start their internship after they have completed their degree. Their internship lasts for a year, and then they go on to do residency in their chosen specialties. The big question is, let's say you do decide to study abroad, can you go back to India and practice medicine? And the answer is yes, but there are a few things that you need to inform the Medical Council of India that you're planning to study abroad. Or if you have already studied abroad, you need to inform them that you're Indian and you want to come back and practice in India. So that's called the eligibility certificate. And it's all online now. You can go on the MCI website and do that. So even if you're planning on studying medicine abroad, what the MCI recommended as of 2018 is that you should still sit for the NEET examination, because there are some universities in Asia that do consider that as a good mode of choosing students into their medical school, one of them being Georgia. If you're a medical graduate who's returning from one of the 5 countries that I've listed, you do not have to sit for a screening exam. So what that is when you have graduated from a university outside India and you want to practice in India, they want to make sure that you're competent enough. So it's more of a competency exam to see if you're a good enough doctor to work in India or not. If you have graduated from the 5 countries, you do not have to sit for this exam, and you can just apply for a registration with MCI. So to answer the question, if you can work in India after you've studied abroad, is yes, but there are a few things that you need to keep in the back of your mind is obviously where you're going to study and what your future plan is. You need to keep that in mind before you make any further decisions. The other thing is postgraduate training in the UK. The other question I get is, you can finish your MBBS degree in India, but can you go abroad to train, to do your postgraduate training? And the answer to that is also yes. So the way it works in the UK is you're right at the bottom of the pyramid as a new graduate, and then you go on to do your foundation training. which is for 2 years, and that's for everyone, regardless of where you come from. Even if you're a UK graduate or an Indian graduate, it does not matter. You need to do your foundation training. You go on to choose either medicine or surgery, and then you work up the ladder to become a consultant. So with that being said, anyone and everyone can come to the UK with an Indian MBBS degree. The only requirement is that you need to pass the competency test, just exactly how India has it for foreign doctors, UK has it for foreign doctors as well. It's called the PLAB exam, but after that you can apply for training, and it's a full-time paid contract, and you do different specialties, and you have loads and loads of research opportunities as well. The good thing, or the different thing, the thing that stands out is you don't necessarily have to do an entrance exam in order to go into specialty training. You just have to show an interest in the specialty, and you need to make sure that you have had, the requirements, you fulfill the requirements, you've done the hours in that specialty, and you need to make sure that, you explain to the panel that you're interested in that specialty in particular. You have different exams in the middle, and these are quite famous exams, the MRCS, the MRCP, or FRCS, FRCP. These exams happen in the middle. They are not admission exams, or they're not exams for your seat. These are exams to check your competency. Even if you fail those exams, it does not mean that you'll be kicked out of the program. It just, you'll have to sit for them again and keep repeating it. And you can't become a consultant until you have, cleared those exams. So this is just a very complicated slide about how it actually works in the UK. It's just divided by years. With regards to United States, so you can finish studying in India and you can go to the United States for further training, but they do require all of the students to sit for the United States medical licensing examination, which is quite a heavy examination itself because there are 3 different exams. And that's for everyone. Even the local students have to sit for this exam, and so do the foreign students. So what happens is in the United States, you directly match to a specialty of your choice. So let's say if I'm someone who's interested in general surgery, I can directly choose to specialize in general surgery. I don't have to do my 2 years of foundation like in the UK. And there's a good mix of public and private hospitals in the United States in itself, and you have loads of research opportunities. The training program does coincide a little bit with the United Kingdom, and they have loads of competency exams in the middle of your residency to go ahead and to, prove that you can be a consultant. These exams are quite common. You'll find loads and loads of doctors in India itself who do take the MRCS and the FRCS because it is one of the benchmark examinations that set the standards for consultants across the globe. So a bit about my experience as a doctor so far. If you ask any of your school teachers, specifically like Jaya ma'am, or if you ask Shakuntala ma'am or Raki Mishra ma'am, they can say that I wasn't always the best student in academics. If you think about it, I always struggled with my academics. And I like to say that I personally do believe I'm not smart, but I do work hard. And that does go a long way because I always struggle with subjects like physics. I always struggle with subjects like math, and I still struggle with subjects like that. So if that's in the back of your head that you can't do well in certain subjects, remember that you don't necessarily have to do very well. You just have to make sure that you're working hard and you're putting in the effort. And then you will see that there is a transition that you will go through, regardless of if you're trying to do medicine or engineering or art. You will have this transition period of where you're going from high school to those respective schools. And you will see that there is a change, because you have been accustomed to a system for the past 12 years, and then you are expected to change the way you study, you're expected to change the way you absorb knowledge when you're in university, and you will come across different exams as well. What I'll say is it's quite a bumpy ride, regardless of if you're doing medicine or not, but the school in itself will, equip you with the skills that you need in order to make sure that you do okay. You will go on clinical placements as medical students, and there will be moments in your life where you have absolutely no idea what's going on, and that is okay. That is a very common feeling as a medical student, sometimes even as a doctor. but it's also where you realize your potential to become a good doctor. You will realize you're part of the team. You'll realize, how to get things done. You get involved with patients quite early on. I remember my first ever patient interaction was on the second or the third week of my medical school. So it is quite a wholesome experience when you do decide to do medicine. It's not always about studying anatomy, studying physiology, knowing which bone, knowing which muscle, or knowing which tendon. It's sometimes more about how to talk to people, how to talk to your nurses, how to make sure that your patients are having, a little bit better time in the hospital than they were having last day. So it does come down to soft skills at times. When you have been studying in Doha for the past 12 years and you go to a different country, or if you even go back to India, you will face a bit of a culture shock. It might not be quite significant for some of you, but it might be quite significant. It can be very significant for those who are, going to study in a different state or in a whole different country. You've been living in a bubble in Doha for the past how many ever years, and when you go, you need to remember that the way you adapt is going to make quite a significant impact on your life. Nobody ever told me that I'll be facing a culture shock when I went to Malaysia, and I did face a culture shock while I was there. It was quite different, the way people are, the way, how everything works, because you've been living in this cocoon, being, helped by your parents and your teachers, and then you're left by yourself. What you need to know is your batchmates and your colleagues are there with you for that as well. And if you're having a bad experience, chances are somebody else is having a bad experience as well. And that goes the same for good experiences. And the big question that I get is, how does it feel? How different is it from being a medical student? And it's very, very different, I'll tell you that, because the amount of responsibilities you have on your shoulder, they're significantly more than what you did have when you were in medical school. I'll talk a bit more about that. So when I graduated, everything was going fine. I was expected to have a graduation ceremony in June, but that never happened thanks to COVID. I was just expected to start work immediately as soon as I finished my exams. And I'm quite grateful for that experience, but I'm not grateful for COVID. What it has done is it has made us realize that we can be very efficient, we can be very modern, we can have latest technologies in healthcare, but nature will always have a way to surprise us in one way or the other. And it has also made us, or made the entire world, change a few things about its healthcare system to begin with. And it came to the point where it wasn't about assessing the efficiency of medical students. It came to a point where they just needed help. And that's what happened in the UK, in India, and almost every part of the world, where they were asking final year medical students to come up and help in hospitals. With the experience that we have had so far, we might be better equipped to handle the next pandemic if and when it happens, but you can't say that for sure. So keeping that in mind, if you do choose to study medicine, regardless of where you go, you need to remember that there might come a point in your life where you're asked to do things which are way outside your comfort zone, which might scare you. But the reason I'm saying this is most of you might ask, why should you do this profession to begin with? And like Maria said in her opening statement, and so did Soma Ma'am, it does come down to the passion that you have for any profession that you do. And that's one thing that COVID-19 has made us realize is, you are not going to be happy, doing a job that you're not passionate about. One of the quotes that I've recently read by this famous doctor turned comedian is this. He was asked to talk to high school students about his profession, about his experience as a doctor. And this is exactly what he told them. That, the hours are terrible, the pay is terrible, conditions are awful, you're underappreciated, unsupported, disrespected, and frequently physically endangered, but there's no better job in the world. And, when you say something like that, it makes you wonder, why would you want to do it in the first place then? And the answer to that is what's exactly written on top of that slide. What are you passionate about? It all comes down to what gives you that adrenaline rush in your blood system. For some of us who are as crazy as I am, the answer is medicine, helping out people, or surgery in some situations as well. So my advice to you guys would be, choose a profession that you like, choose a profession that you're passionate about. You will come across, I certainly have come across colleagues who came into medicine because of different pressures in their life and they didn't necessarily enjoy it. I went into medicine because I was always passionate about it. I was quite interested with the way the human body works. And that's how I got into medicine. Like Asna ma'am said at the start, it all comes down to service before self. Because if you don't like your job, if you don't like the things that you do in your life, you're not going to be willing to wake up at 7 a.m. in the morning and go into the hospital. And that goes for any job that you go for, be it an office-based job, be it a site-based job. If you're not liking it, then chances are you're not giving the right service to the people who need it. So if you are someone who's passionate about something, you will automatically put service before self. And the question I get is, what does make a good doctor? And I can tell you that being a good doctor isn't about knowing the fine details of medicine. It's not about knowing the fine workings of the human body. It's sometimes about your interprofessional skills. How do you talk to your patients? How you talk to your nurses? How well you get along with the rest of the team on the ward? It comes up to that. And people think that doctors know everything. The reality is doctors usually don't know everything, and it's mostly guesswork half of the time. And a good doctor is able to say that, you know what, I don't know what's going on, but I'll try my best to find out what is, rather than someone who is so arrogant that, they are willing to risk someone's life just to make sure that they are right half of the time. But at the end of the day, and I'm repeating myself over here, is a good doctor is passionate about what he or she does. Be it research, be it clinical work, be it volunteer work, be it working for Doctors Without Borders, be it pro bono work where you're not taking any pay. So it all comes down to that. It's not about knowing your anatomy, head to toe. It's not about knowing your textbook from the front cover to the back cover. It's definitely none of that. And like I said, it's all about what you believe in. I came into medicine because it was just the pure joy of, giving back to the community. And I didn't realize that until I actually started working. And that's because I remember my first day as a doctor, we had this patient on the ward which came in because of really, really high calcium levels in the body, to the point that he might have died if we had not helped him. And it was a very complicated case. And it was a team of endocrinologists and surgeons. And it took us at least 3 months to bring him back on his feet. And the first time he walked on the ward was a moment of just pride and joy that it was something that I helped with. I might not be the lead surgeon or the lead physician on the case, but it was something that I helped with. And I helped this man get back on his feet. And a couple of weeks from then, he got to go back home in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And he is going back home on his own feet with a smile on his face. And it was that tiny moment that makes you realize that 6 years of medicine, it's worth it, because you feel acknowledged, you feel that you have fulfilled your expectations. You have this, that's the reason why you have enrolled in this job, because there's no other job that you might want to go for if you don't find any happiness in it. So my advice to you guys going forward is, you might be going from 10th standard to 11th, or you might be going from 12th onto the next university phase of your life. You will have loads and loads of challenges up ahead. You will have increasing set of responsibilities. Some of you might be going away from home, away from family. Some of you might not even know how main things or main appliances at home work, and you might be asked to do things. Like I said, you will be challenged. You will be pushed out of your comfort zone. And that's where you grow the most. That's where you realize that in that moment, you might feel very uncomfortable. You might feel you can't do it. But when you do come out on the other end, you will be much better. You will be much better equipped. You will know how to deal with pressure. Medicine is something that's quite stressful. And what I've realized is it is okay not to be okay at times. Your mental health is fluctuant. It can go up, it can go down, and that's human, and that happens to everyone. We as doctors have this bad habit of putting a shield on our face and just moving on with life, and that does impact us. What I've learned is, it's okay to, take a break. It's okay to understand why you're feeling that way. It's okay to reflect on it. And it's always better to realize or understand why you're feeling that way and then work on it. Because regardless of which profession you go into, you will be, challenged by stress, and you will be challenged by opportunities, and you will be challenged by different people in your life. And it's okay to, realize that, what, you're not doing your very best and you need to do something about it. And that's where your team comes in, because chances are, if you're feeling down, there's someone else who's also feeling down. But it also comes down to you at the end of the day, where that's where your self-motivation comes in, where you have to, say to yourself that it's, you have to get up, you have to do this, and you have to start feeling better. I didn't start working on myself until I was halfway into med school. And by that, I mean analyzing your own feelings, understanding what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, not just in academics, but you as a person. Because at the end of the day, you will go on to work with other people, and your team dynamics is something that can make or break your day. So with that being said, you might have loads and loads of questions. I'll try to go through that. But just as a reminder, all of you will succeed, because if you look at the facts, you have had loads and loads of hurdles to, jump over. You have had loads and loads of, obstacles in your path, but all of you are here and you have made it thus far. So it's quite unlikely that you won't be able to make it, even better. You won't be able to go even further. So just believe in yourself, keep doing what you're doing, just strive to be better, and you will do a much better job than you think you're gonna do. So that's everything that I have for you guys. I can see there are loads and loads of questions. I'm gonna zoom in really quickly through this. So I want to be a orthopedic doctor. Which country do you recommend to study and practice? Anywhere and everywhere. You have human beings every part of the world. You will have broken bones in every part of the world. Like I said, you will get loads and loads of experience in any country you go to. India, being one of the most populated countries out there, will have, not a surprise, more broken bones than any other part of the world. So my recommendation would be, you can go study in India. You can be a doctor in India. You can be good at what you do wherever you are. What is the biggest challenge I face while studying medicine? That's a very good question. I might come back to that a bit later on. Right. Have you ever done robotic surgery? Yes, I have. I haven't done it, but I was part of the team. If you guys attended Vatsal's talk on the Da Vinci, which is a video game for, not a video game, but it's a robot for surgeons, and we like to joke it as if it's a video game for surgeons. It's quite cool. It's quite fascinating. It is definitely something that's the future of healthcare, where everything happens robotically. And it is a specialty that's quite new, but it's very, very prevalent. And India is actually one of the leading countries in robotic surgery at the moment, because I did my electives in robotic surgery in India. Right. Right. Just give me a second. Can you please tell some co-curricular activities that are required along with academics? So debating, photography, basically anything and everything that Rendezvous covers. Each and every event in the Rendezvous is regarded as a co-curricular activity. Are exams like JEE and NEET important for applying for medicine? If you're planning on applying or planning to study medicine in India, yes, they are very important. How do you prepare for the IELTS exam? So the IELTS exam has 4 sections: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. It's exactly how you are taught in school. It's exactly the way it goes in school from your 9th standard onwards. I particularly didn't need any extra preparation. Some people might need extra preparation, and that's okay, but the school does a great job, even without the teachers realizing that they're doing a great job. Do you need to be admitted to FIT-G to be able to easily write exams such as IELTS? No. You just need English language proficiency for IELTS, which is something that's being taught regardless of if you're in FIT-G or not. What are the standardized tests needed to study medicine in Malaysia? So Malaysia does not require any standardized tests. You just need to have cleared your IELTS and you need to have a score from your 12th standard results. Can co-curricular activities be sports, like badminton? Yes. Sports, any form of sports can be regarded as a co-curricular activity. How much percentage do you need to apply for top colleges in the UK or US? Colleges which don't require math. So a good, like I said, a good average would be 70% and above. But like I said, these application processes are not focused just on your academics. Obviously, if you have a higher score, it increases your chances of getting admitted to that college, but it doesn't promise you that you'll get admitted to a college. What did I choose for my scenario in my interview? I would send the tram along, as sad as it sounds, I chose to send the tram along the path which had the pregnant woman on it, because in my thinking, it would be better to save 6 lives rather than 2. It's a very debatable answer. Is Mexico's degree expensive as it is known? Mexico's degree. So you have different universities in Mexico. You have a few private medical universities in Mexico that kind of publicize their program as though they have partnerships with the US and that you're able to transfer to the US after you graduate. Some of these universities are really nice, but what you need to do is do your research, because there are some universities that do not do the same program, and you don't want to be someone who gets stuck in the system and you don't know a way out. Is the medical degree expensive? Yes. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is an expensive degree. It is, I think, one of the most expensive private degrees out there, and it can be quite a challenge to get yourself admitted into a medical degree. With that being said, most medical degrees are your finances are sometimes managed by the medical school itself, depending on your scores, depending on your portfolio. Almost all medical universities that I know of have a scholarship program. Some of them do a 50% scholarship, some of them do 100% scholarship. Some countries actually do employment contracts, meaning they will pay for your medical school and you work for them after you graduate. So that is something that's quite common. Also depends on where you're doing your medical degree, depends on that. If you're someone who is going from Doha back to India, you have the opportunity to enroll as an NRI student. That automatically increases your tuition fee to an exorbitant amount. So it's something that you need to do your research on. There are loads and loads of opportunities for scholarships, for financial aid. So I would suggest exploring that. What does it mean to be a resident doctor in the US? So it means anyone who is, so a resident doctor is basically someone who's specializing. It means if I say I'm a resident in general surgery, it means I'm in the training pathway for surgery. Right? Did you as a student face a difficulty choosing the field in medicine, like cardiovascular and everything else? The reality is you will change your mind every other month as you go through medical school. So 1 month you'll be like, oh, I really like the cardiovascular system, I want to be a cardiologist. And then you go on and do accidents and emergency and you go like, no, I really want to be an emergency doctor. And that happens up until the end of medical school. And the good thing out of that is you kind of figure out what you don't want to do, but there will always be something that you will know that, that's something that I want to do in the future. So it's not a difficult option. You have loads of time to choose what specialty you want to go into, but it's definitely not an easy answer. You will have loads and loads of opportunities to figure out what you like. How competitive is admission in medical colleges abroad? It can be a bit competitive because these universities have a set number of seats for international students, like I said, which is why their application process is a bit more longer and a bit more in-depth, where they look at not just your academics, but other things as well. To get a degree in forensic pathology, is the undergrad process the same? As in, is there any chance a direct program to get a degree in forensics? So it depends on, it's a very particular question. So you have two different pathways. You can become a doctor and then you can choose to become a forensic pathologist, or you can do a medical degree in sciences and choose to do just study pathology, which means you won't be a doctor, but you will be someone who is quite an expert in just purely forensic pathology. Forensic pathology as a specialty in its own is a part of medicine. So you apply to be a doctor. At the end of your degree, you choose to specialize in forensic pathology, and that's how you go about it. Is it true that doctors have a very busy and overloaded life? I think that's a very subjective question, because what might be busy for me might not be, and overloaded for me might not be overloaded for you. I am someone who enjoys work. I'm one of those weirdos who kind of look forward to the next day at work. And that can seem as quite overloaded to someone else. What I would say is the first few years of your career are a bit busy because you're getting used to the system, you're understanding what it's like. If there are loads and loads of questions, I think I'm running out of time over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over back to Maria. Okay.
What a wonderful session. I think we can all call it a success with no complications. Thank you, Dr. Faid, for being a source of consultation and motivation to all of us. As we reach the end of the sleek and competing consultation, I would like to conclude this exhibition by articulating the acknowledgements. We would like to thank our guest of honor, Dr. Faid Khopekar'S, for sacrificing his precious time in order to take part in this consultation session. We would like to enunciate our sincere gratitude to our school management and Principal Dps Alumni for making this free consultation possible with their immeasurable support and wisdom. We are fortunate to have the phenomenal support of our Vice Principal, Ms. Soma Bhattacharjee, and Ms. Mary Cruz, Academic and Activity Coordinator, Ms. Rakhi Mishra, Ms. Vijayashri, and Ms. Preeti Modi, along with the incredible personnel of teachers. We would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Harish and IT Department, Mr. Abhishek Jad, Computer Science Department, for their constant support and cooperation. A very special appreciation to Ms. Jaya Majumdar for the smooth organization of this operation. Last, but certainly not the least, I would like to thank all the participants for joining in this consultation session. We thank you all for being a treasured audience on this remarkable evening, and we wish you all a wonderful day ahead.